Hi, Nomi. How are you? This is a video just for you. I told you recently that I heard an excellent drush about Hanukkah and that I think has applications to Yom Ha'atzmaut and Yom Yerushalayim. And I wanted to share with you. And I was thinking, what's the best way to do it? And then I realized the best way is to just video myself saying it over and sending it to you. So that's what I'm going to do. So I want to, before I start, I want to make it clear that I am not trying to change your mind and convince you that that the way that Medinat Yisrael was formed was according to Torah or anything like that. I'm not trying to convince you to walk around, waving Israeli flags and singing Atikva all day long. Not the goal here. But I thought this was a really, really great drush. And I think it really applies not only to Hanukkah, but also to Yom Ha'atzmaut. So shortly after the drush, I wrote a summary of it. And I'm just going to read it to you because that I think is really the best way to make sure that I don't screw it up. Especially because the person who gave the drush was really good at citing sources. And so I'm I should cite the sources properly too. Okay, so here we go. Because you should always say a thing in the name of its author, the following is a brief, incomplete, and probably not very good summary of a drush I heard just after last Hanukkah from my Rav, Rabbi Bram Weinberg of the Kent Mill Synagogue in Silver Spring, formerly of the Young Israel of West Hartford. Okay, so let's start with Zechariah. Zechariah was a prophet who lived during the time of the end of the Babylonian exile, the ingathering of the Jewish people to Yerushalayim, and the rebuilding of the second Beis Hamikdash. We always think of this time as a time of perfect miracles. Our exile was over. We had done sufficient teshuvah that we were able to go back to our homeland. And not only that, but we merited to have the Beis Hamikdash again. But was this redemption really as perfect as we think? Chapter 3 of Zechariah begins as follows. And he showed me Joshua, Yoshua, the high priest, standing before the angel of the Lord, and the Satan was standing to his right to accuse him. And Hashem said to the Satan, Hashem shall rebuke you, O Satan, and Hashem shall rebuke you, he who chose Yerushalayim. Is this one not a brand plucked from fire? Now Yoshua was wearing filthy garments and standing before the angel. Okay, so that's the Zechariah. So the pasuk says that Yoshua the Kohen Gadol was plucked from the fire, but why was he in the fire in the first place? Rashi says that his sons married women who were unfit for Kohanim, and that Yoshua didn't intervene. His sons were burned, but Yoshua was saved from the fire, and he stood before the angels in filthy garments that were grossed in singe and smelled like smoke. And in this, he stood before angels? In this, he's doing service in the Beis Hamikdash? And the answer is yes. From this, we learn that Yoshua definitely was not perfect. He wasn't even close, but he was still saved from the fire, and he was still worthy to be the Kohen Gadol in the newly rebuilt Beis Hamikdash, even in his imperfect, filthy garments. Moving ahead a bit to Hanukkah, we all know the story of how the Greeks defiled the Beis Hamikdash and the Maccabees fought them off, rebuilt, and rededicated it, and they all lived happily ever after. Except that they didn't. The war didn't end with the story they tell. Let's take a look at Maccabees chapter 1, verse 5, which says, And it was when the nations around had heard that the altar had been rebuilt and that the Beis Hamikdash had been rededicated as before, they were incensed, and they conspired to annihilate the descendants of Yaakov who were in their midst and began putting Jews to death and killing them. And the nations that were in Gilad were gathered against Israel who were on their border to wipe them out, and they fled to the fortress of Datima, and they put 1,000 men to death there. And they gathered against them from Acre to Tyre, and from Sidon, and the entire Galilee of Gentiles to wipe us out. So, 1 second. After the story as we know it, of the war is over, it was still happening. There were 1,000 Jews killed at Datima, and for this, we have a holiday with singing and dancing and halal with the bracha. The menorah in the Beis Hamikdash was made of gold. Whenever we see pictures of it in the symbol of of Israel, you know, the menorah with the olive branches on either side of it, and all the Hanukkah slideshows for kids, it's always gold. But the Talmud in Maseches, Talmud Menachos 28b says, in the time of the Hashmonaeans, the menorah was not fashioned from wood. Was not fashioned from wood, but from shrapnel of iron that they covered with tin. Later, when they grew richer and could afford to fashion it of higher quality material, they fashioned the menorah from silver. When they again grew richer, they fashioned the menorah from gold. So the menorah that's always depicted in the Hanukkah story as perfect in gold was actually built from scraps of iron. And not only iron, but iron, where did they get this iron? It's scraps from the swords and the shields that they were using in this war, that they found laying around, and they covered it with tin. And so again, we ask, for this we have a holiday with singing and dancing and parties and the Hallel with the bracha? What? And the answer is, in all capital letters, yes. Hell yes. Of course, yes. Okay, Rabbi Weinberg didn't actually say hell yes. That was my little addition, but it fits. Yes, 100% yes. Were the miracles of the time of Zechariah and of Hanukkah perfect? No, not even close. Only 50,000-ish Jews returned to Eretz Yisrael when the Babylonian exile ended. We don't know exactly how many stayed behind, but we do know that 50,000 who came back was a very small minority. Yeshua the Kohen Gadol stood before the angels in filthy, singed garments and asked Zechariah, "What are the two olive trees upon the right of the candlestick and upon the left side thereof?" And an angel had to tell the Kohen Gadol about the olive branches because he didn't even know what they were. And this is the Kohen Gadol? The Beis HaMikdash was still rebuilt, even with an imperfect Kohen Gadol, and even with most of the people still in Bavel, and even with those returned being filthy and just barely being worthy of it. But it was still a miracle, a huge one that we still celebrate today. An imperfect miracle is still a miracle. An imperfect redemption is still a redemption. And Hanukkah, 1,000 Jews killed at one time, a menorah made from literal scraps of iron from swords and shields that they found laying around. Definitely not the perfect story we're always told. But who cares? The Beis HaMikdash was pure again. The menorah was lit, and the Greeks were out of Harabayas. This was an absolute miracle. And not only was it a miracle, but one that we have a mitzvah to publicize and to celebrate loudly, proudly, and publicly. An imperfect miracle is still a miracle. An imperfect redemption is still a redemption. So that was the summary of Rabbi Bram Weinberg's Josh. I'm going to close my laptop now so I don't look at it. And so we're going to talk now a little bit about how this relates to Yom HaAtzmaut, and I think it's pretty clear. I mean, like I said, I am absolutely not trying to convince you that it was done in a Torah appropriate way, because it wasn't. It just wasn't. And no amount of finagling and twisting around is going to change that fact. Like, it just wasn't. But neither were those two things that we just discussed. You know, the Hanukkah story, nowhere in the Torah does it say make a menorah out of scraps from iron, scraps from swords and shields that you've just been using to kill people, and now you're going to build something for the Beis HaMikdash out of it. Like, David HaMelech was not allowed to build the Beis HaMikdash because he had too much blood on his hands. Can you imagine how much literal blood was on the swords and the shields that these people were using to build the menorah? I mean, I have to assume that they cleaned it off first, but work with me here. In this for the Beis HaMikdash, clearly there is no Torah that says that this is how it was supposed to be. And Yeshua the Kohen Gadol couldn't even keep his sons from marrying people that they weren't supposed to marry. And this guy was the Kohen Gadol? And no way. There's no, under no circumstance, I cannot imagine the Beis HaMikdash being with the Kohen who's standing there, doesn't even know what an olive branch is, and is standing there with like filthy garments because he was just saved from a fire that he was just barely worthy of having been saved from. Like, this is the way that the Torah wants it to be. I have serious trouble believing that. So making the jump, when I see videos of, not Yom Ha'atzmaut, but Yom Yerushalayim, when I see videos of the soldiers taking Harabayas and they're saying Harabayit Beyadenu, like, I cannot hear these words without starting to cry a little bit. It's such a miracle that first of all, that Harabayit Beyadenu, but even backing up, that we have the IDF who is able to go and take Harabayit for us, and that we have, that we have a state that sponsors a Jewish army to protect the land of Eretz Yisrael and the people of Eretz Yisrael. And, it definitely, like I said, definitely not done in the most Torah dig away, but like, an imperfect redemption is still a redemption. And I feel like we can definitely qualify this as a redemption. Not a perfect one, for sure. Definitely not done in the way like the Torah would have wanted it, but neither was the menorah built out of iron swords, So there's room to, I don't want to say there's room to be lenient, but like, you see what I'm getting at, I hope. Yeah. That's what I'm getting at. So, I mean, listen, like I said, I am absolutely not trying to convince you to like start waving Israeli flags around and singing Atikva and saying Hallel with or without a bracha on Yom Ha'atzmaut or Yom Yerushalayim. I absolutely do not think you should be doing that if you don't feel it's appropriate. But I am trying to convince you that it would not be hypocritical for you to wear kahol and or levan on Yom Ha'atzmaut. An imperfect miracle is still a miracle, and an imperfect redemption is still a redemption. And those imperfect miracles and redemptions are absolutely worthy of being celebrated and publicized and have a big deal made out of them. And also, oh gosh, my kids are coming home. I hear the doorbell ringing. On a more personal note, if you would wear kahol and or levan, you don't even have to wear them both, just one or the other. My life will be so much easier because I won't have to put up with Nava's, for lack of a better term, her bitching about it for 7 to 10 days after. Listen, we all know that Nava is very zealous when it comes to Eretz Yisrael. It's such a part of her. And you guys are such good friends, I think, she really loves you. She really respects you. And I know that this was not your goal, and like, do not tell her that I'm saying any of this. She will kill me. But when you come to school on Yom Ha'atzmaut without kahol v'levan, she sees it as you're spitting in her face. And I know you're not trying to. Like, I know that is not your goal. You're not waking up in the morning and saying, how can I offend Nava today? Like, I know you're not doing that. But that's how she sees it. It's why she gets so upset. She just, like, she can't, it's so important to her that she's a little bit blind. She's a little blinded by how important it is that she can't, with this topic, for her, there is absolutely no room for other people's opinions. And that's hard. And I get that. But as I said, I think it would not be hypocritical to wear kahol and or levan on Yom Ha'atzmaut because of that whole long 10-minute drush that I said. Well, badly, but you got it, I hope. Okay, so my kids are home. I gotta get going. Anyway, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. And, we can talk about it at a time when we can talk about it. See you later.